In my career at Microsoft and beyond, I've worked with a lot of companies to figure out how we can deploy and accelerate the adoption of AI into their workforce. Whether we like it or not, this is the future. People are going to be using more and more AI, more and more technology, and the people that are able to effectively use it and take advantage of it are going to outcompete everyone else. So these are the top couple of tips that I have learned by doing this over the last couple of years, and I'm excited to share them with you today. So I'm going to start off by talking about where some of these tips apply. The first thing is, if you're running a business and you have a team, this will apply. 2, if you're an employee, this will also apply. And 3, if you interact with anyone outside of in the real world, basically, if you interact with anyone in the real world, this will also apply. So what are these tips that I'm talking about? The first thing, and this is something I didn't know, but I was actually shown and I learned from my mentors and I understood, is that you want to first talk to AI about the problem that you're trying to solve. So a lot of people don't do this, right? They just assume that, okay, I'll just wake up one day and figure out how to do it. The best way to do it is actually ask AI. So this means ask AI, okay, I have this problem, for example, and I'll talk through a couple of examples here. I have this problem that I want to solve. What are some interesting ways that I could deploy AI to do it? The second thing is to actually use it, right? Give access to the tools, and use them. A lot of people have these tools, right? The tools are free. You can find ChatGPT for free, DeepSeek, Gemini. All these companies provide free access to their tools. Start giving those tools to your team, to your employees, or use them yourself and start using them, right? If you don't use them, you won't be able to actually take advantage of them. And number 3 is really the framework for thinking around how to use these tools. So with all of this, I think let's go through some examples. I'm going to start off with the third one, which is the framework. Really, how do we want to think about AI? My work has shown me that there's about 4 key pieces of information that you need in order to work with AI effectively. The 4 of them are as follows. The first one is something called context. The C stands for context. What is context? Well, when these AIs wake up, right, they're really, really intelligent, right? Their IQ is really high, but they're in a black box, right? They don't know who you are. They don't know what the world is or, what world they woke up in, where they are, what you're trying to do, right? What company you work for, who your family is, what your goals are, what your situation is. They know nothing, right? Unless you give them that information and put that inside the box with them, they actually have no idea what you're trying to do. So it's effectively like going onto the street in the middle of a country that you've never been to, grabbing someone, and then giving them an instruction. If that's how you use ChatGPT, well, what do you expect? You're not going to get great responses, right? The biggest lesson I would say is you have to give all of the context to the AI in order to get an effective response out of it. So context is really the who. These models allow you to basically create any employee that you want. You can negotiate with Genghis Khan. You can have George Washington help review your legal documents. You can have Steve Jobs help give you design feedback. These are things that weren't possible before, but you can basically define whoever you want. And obviously it's not going to be perfect, right? It's not going to actually be Genghis Khan, but it'll start to play that personality, right? It'll start to pretend and use the information that it knows about how he negotiated, what his style of operating was, and all of these things. And you can start to create that human, almost like a human, to work with, that coworker to work with. You can almost create that coworker that you can work with. So this is, I would say, probably the most important thing is you have to define who you want to work with. If you want to negotiate with someone, go get the world's best FBI-trained negotiator for hostage negotiation and ask them, okay, how do I negotiate this deal? That's going to be much, much better than grabbing a random person off the street and saying, help me negotiate this deal, right? You can get someone that you want. Why would you go to your lawyer for medical advice, right? Why would you go to a random person for medical advice? Why not create an AI doctor and say, you're an expert cardiologist, I have this heart problem, what are some steps that I can do? The response that you're going to get is much, much better because this AI will now have a perspective about who it is, right? It'll now, instead of being this black box and this intelligence, well, now it has a role to play. And giving it that role is where context comes in. Give it the background, tell it you work for this company, these are the people that you work with, this is what you were hired to do, this is your background, this is your education, this is what you're really good at, this is what you avoid. Now it starts to actually perform like a person. This is very, very important. The second thing is something called task. So task is the what. So the second thing is something called task. Task is the what are you trying to get the model to do or get the AI to do. If you think about it, we all have tasks, right? Where you have a lot of context and background, right? I worked at Microsoft, I went to Carnegie Mellon, I studied computer engineering. I've worked in business for the last 5 years and I've helped deploy AI. That's a lot of context to bring into any room that I'm in or any work that I do. But I can bring all that context, but if I'm not given a task to do, I'm kind of useless, right? The important thing here is somebody has to give me a task. They have to say, okay, write a report, or okay, give us 3 tips as to how we can deploy AI, or go and write this code, or how can we automate this thing? That's a task that's given to me. The same way you have to give a task to an AI, right? So now that you've hired the AI that you want, you've given them all the context, the second thing is, how do you give them the task? Here's where you can be very specific, right? So the goal here of the task is you want to be super, super specific and detailed. The key point here is if you just give someone a random task, they're not going to be able to do it well. What's in your head, in order to communicate that to another person, unless you are very specific, it's very difficult for the other person to understand. So imagine you hire a new teammate or there's a new person on your team and you give them a super complicated task. You basically say, okay, build this product. They're going to struggle for weeks. They're not going to know what tech stack are we using, what APIs are we using, who is this product for, all of those things they have to figure out. So the beauty is by giving a very specific task, you can now get a very good answer. If I get a random person or a new member on my team and I say, all I want you to do is write this one function that takes in a date and outputs the calendar's availability on that date. Super simple function. Anybody can write that code. Well, especially AI can write that code, but now by giving it a very specific task, you're going to expect very good outcome. Versus if I say, build me a scheduling system, there's a billion different ways you can build a scheduling system. You can do it based on calendar, you can do it based on time, you can do it based on availability, you can do it based on services. There's so many different ways to handle that task that it's impossible to expect anyone, let alone an AI, to be able to do it. So after you give it a good task, now your job is to give it the input that it needs. So let's take an example. If you're asking AI to grade a resume, first thing is you got to give it really good context, right? You got to say, you're the world's best recruiter. You're hiring for this job description. You know all of the characteristics and qualifications that are needed in order to recruit for this person. That's good context. The second thing is the task. I want you to look at this resume and look at this job description and give me the 5 areas of strengths and weaknesses that this person might have in this job. That's a pretty solid task. If you give that to anyone, you know what you're going to get back. You're going to get 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. And especially if you give it to the best recruiter in the world, well, you're going to get a pretty good answer. The other thing is, a lot of people sometimes forget to do this, which is actually give it the input. Right? The actual things that it needs, the data that it needs in order to do its work. If you ask someone, compare the resume to the job description, but you don't give them the job description of the resume, how do you expect that to work? That's not going to work. So a lot of people sometimes forget to actually give it the input that it needs in order to do the work. The final thing is something called output, which is really how you want the data back. So for example, in the example I just gave, the way I want the data back is 5 pros and 5 cons, 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. Now, even in that, are they 5 paragraphs of strengths? Are they 5 one-word strengths? Are they an emoji? What is the strength? It's very important to actually structure the output and say it exactly as you want it. So an example of this situation, I would say, I want you to output for me a table with 2 columns, one called strengths, one called weaknesses, and in each strength, I want you to write a 1-sentence description of the strength and a 2-paragraph description as to why it will be beneficial for this person to be in this job description. So now you have a much, much better sense of what you're actually going to get back. And the beauty of this, that a lot of people don't necessarily talk to, is this will also improve your ability to work with humans, right? Improve human communication. If I hire you, or if I work with you, or you work for someone, by giving clear context, task description, specificity, all the data they need, and telling them how you want the response back, you're going to be able to work with them a lot better. So this is, I would say, extremely important in order to kind of use AI really well. The second thing that I think is very important, I'm kind of going backwards here, is to actually use the tools. And at this point, there is no excuse, right? Tools are available freely. Everyone has access to them. The only situation that I would say you have to be careful of tools is any security or HIPAA data, right? So all this means is that when you use publicly available tools, these things go out the window, right? If you give Manus your proprietary information, they're most likely going to use it. They're going to train on it. It's in their terms and conditions. They will train on that data. So will ChatGPT, so will Gemini, so will all these things. Now, if you want to work with us, we provide a secure HIPAA compliant tool called Quixoa to our clients that basically enables them to use enterprise grade OpenAI, Google, Gemini, all these things in a fully secure and HIPAA compliant manner. But if that is not, like for most, 98% of businesses, this is not really that important. If you are one of those 2%, talk to us, we will help you out. But if it doesn't apply, give your company, give your team a tool, like a list of tools to use. We can also help provide that. I have a list on my website. Go ahead and grab it. But there's so many tools that are available to do so many things. Everything from design to marketing to just writing to coding. Pretty much anything that is being done today, there is an AI tool to support with it. And if there is not, it can be built very quickly. So please look around and take advantage of the tools that are out there, because without that, you're going to fall behind. Imagine being an accountant and you basically, Excel is made and you're still doing all calculations by hand on pen and paper. At the end of the day, an accounting firm that everyone is using Excel versus everyone is doing things on paper, who do you think is going to get more business, get more clients, be able to charge more, or reduce their prices, basically grow? Who has the edge? It's obviously going to be the company that knows how to use the tools that makes their job easier. The final thing I want to talk about is actually leveraging AI to help you with this work. So a lot of people they just ignore this fact. You can go right into any AI tool and just ask it. Explain to it all of the context, give it the task, give it the input, and give it the output that you want, and say, work with me. Help me develop a program to do this. And I'll talk through a couple of examples of this in some other videos. You can find them below. But this is a huge, huge potential that people just ignore. Just by talking to AI, have it be your advisor. Say you're an expert technology builder, you're an expert AI consultant. You know all of the latest tools that have come out from all of these companies. Now give me a plan for how I can deploy AI in my work. Just by doing that, and you can describe your work obviously, but just by doing that, you will at least get some starting points where you can start to think about where it can go. You can now ask that same AI, write me the prompts that would be helpful. Give me the links to the tools that would be helpful. Tell me what to sign up for. Tell me to try. So at the end of it all, these are kind of the tips that I would recommend. The 3 tips: ask AI, use the tools and figure them out, and use this prompting framework to kind of make sure that you're working with AI in the most effective way. This will, no matter what, benefit you if you work for a team or you're part of a team or you have your own team. It'll benefit you if you're an employee working for someone else, because you'll be able to get your work done better, faster, more efficiently, at higher quality, and it'll help you in the real world. I use this personally all the time. If there's a plumbing issue or a house issue, or I like some shoes that I see, or I like a table that I see, or I'm even outside and I want to take a picture of a food item and ask how many calories does it have, I can use AI to do that, right? I can always give it a good prompt and utilize that to get that done. And if you ever need any help with your business, or if you're interested in starting to deploy AI, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help, and we will help build your company's AI workforce. So that's what we do. Go ahead and reach out at the link below.